My first ever public reading, so excuse my nerves. Hello everybody, my name is John Hayden and I'm very pleased to be here today, and I'd like to have this opportunity to deliver my synopsis and a reading from my latest ebook. My ebook is called A Throwback and Evolution. The synopsis. A ball of transparent purple gas appears in our atmosphere. Majority of babies born around this time have been affected. They are behaving exceptionally irrational. It's soon discovered that their brains are not developing properly. Arthur was born around this time. He seemed to be unaffected. The world governments know there is an epidemic when these children reach school age and are forced to impose restrictions on class sizes for the safety of teachers and pupils. As a result, Arthur lands in a class where most of the other children are affected and acting wild. A boy in Arthur's class named Zach is a stocky build and a bully. On a daily basis, he is up to evil mischief, beating and intimidating the other pupils. One day, he leads a group to attack and kill the teacher. Arthur played no part but was tarred with the same brush. They become the youngest offenders ever to be imprisoned. Arthur goes through hell during his incarceration at the hands of Zach. After their release from prison, the world by now full of children and teenagers acting like animals is not a safe place. The world leaders decide to segregate massive portions of each country with 30-foot walls to isolate the really nasty teenagers, as the prisons bulge with the ever-increasing population of these kids. Arthur thinks Zach is finally out of his life, but to the contrary. Zach takes over the segregated area, builds an army, and is Arthur's tormentor for years to come. Arthur, placid by nature, is compelled to take vengeance on Zach after Zach attacks the most precious people in his life, his parents and his beloved girlfriend. He has to break into the segregated area where Zach resides, knowing he stands alone against Zach and his army of deranged teenagers. That's the synopsis. This is the courthouse scene in the story. The day of the hearing finally came. Young Arthur clasped his mother's and father's hands as they pushed their way through the crowded courthouse. He could not see anything more than the coats, bags, arms, hands, legs and shiny shoes of all the people who hustled and bustled around him. They were forcing his parents this way and that as they tried to reach the courtroom where the hearing would be. The chattering was almost overbearing as Arthur tried to make sense of what was happening. On their way through the crowd, there were lots of people wishing Arthur's parents well. Some were stopping them and hugging them. Arthur realised the possible outcomes to a fundamental degree. If it went good, he would go home, and if it went not so good, he would not go home for a while. He wished over and over again in his head that it would turn out good. He asked in his prayers for a good outcome. All the conversations between his parents recently pointed to a good outcome, so Arthur was a tad optimistic. Still, this was quite frightening to him, this whole scene. But he was in the best possible hands at the moment, and he knew it. The courtroom door was huge. It was definitely larger than the doors in Arthur's home, with a big shiny brass plate on the bottom and a big shiny brass handle with decorative surround. As they stood outside it with the rest of the defendants and their parents, Zach stood bold and brazen beside his mother. He wasn't holding her hand. He stared at Arthur with a slight grimace on his face while running his finger across his throat, then pointing the same finger at Arthur's parents. Arthur quickly released the grip from his parents' hands and stood up to attention, pretending not to notice, remembering the words of his wise grandmother, who told him to see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Inside he was trembling, but in his defiance, he dared not show his weakness, for fear of its exposition, leading to its exploitation. He was only too aware of exposing weakness to the likes of Zach. A crammed courtroom stood to attention when the judge arrived. 2.5 rows of seating were occupied by the defendants and their parents or guardians. Each of the children's backgrounds and cases were read aloud, as the judge and jury sat and heard the details of the gruesome death of the teacher, while observing photos of the wounds and detailed accounts of the same. The judge scratched his head as if in a gesture of disbelief. Arthur had a very strong case, their barrister had assured them, and that was evident upon hearing the account laid to the court by their highly competent and articulate barrister. Arthur and his parents listened intently. When he finished, Arthur could hear his dad whisper to his mum, "He is good. I can't see how the court could convict Arthur after that." He was renowned for being of good character. It was made clear that he had tried to pull the other children off the teacher. Some children from the group vowed that Arthur never took no part in the crime, even though Zach had warned every one of them to participate or the same fate would happen to their parents as had happened to their teacher. Neighbours, teachers, family, friends and even the local clergy came to profess young Arthur's good character and nature. Professors in psychology even came forward as expert witnesses on behalf of Arthur's father to convey to the court that young Arthur's psychological condition was of good stead. They produced findings from recent tests to clarify what they were stating. When Zach's barrister stood to give an account of Zach, Arthur paid attention. The barrister said that Zach's parents had been informed by Zach that the teacher in question had abused Zach, and it was that which spurred Zach to do as he did that day. The barrister pleaded guilty on Zach's behalf, but asked the court to be lenient in the light of the allegations which had come to the court's attention. The proceedings continued until all the kids' cases were heard. Every one of their barristers pleaded with the court to be lenient, as they were only little children after all. The barrister for the plaintiff asked the court to consider that the perpetrators of this heinous act be locked away and reared in the hands of competent people within the confines of a suitable incarcerating institute. He reminded the court that the teacher had got out of bed that morning to go and teach 4 and 5-year-olds. She was just doing her job. The state employed her. She never for a moment thought she would lose her life that day. If these children, if we can call them that, after their savage animalistic behaviour, are allowed to go free, then the court will be setting the standards for all such future cases. We are all well aware of the way the world is going, and the evidence in this case is compelling. I rest my case. The judge spoke. I've heard such compelling evidence and reports from expert witnesses, and have had so many reports of good behaviour and character that I found it difficult to convict Arthur in this case. We have heard in the open court on numerous occasions how Zach was the instigator of this terrible crime, and how Arthur was the innocent one trying to help the teacher. On those grounds, any fair judge or jury would see Arthur as an innocent and even brave and courageous young boy, and would see grounds to be exceptionally lenient with regards to the justice he is to receive. However, the court has received a number of accounts from separate parties, privately handed to the court because they were afraid to say it in the open court. These letters the court received are the only thing the court can find to point to the contrary in Arthur's case. They read as follows, without disclosing the names of the people who have come forward with these allegations. Our son has told us how Arthur manipulated him into this heinous crime. He pleaded with us not to let anyone know he told us. He said Arthur would kill him if he spoke out. Arthur jumped to his feet in an instant and shouted, "That's wrong, those are all lies. That was Zaku." Bang, bang went the judge's hammer as he shouted, "Silence in the court," while aiming the hammer at Arthur. Arthur sat down with a tug on his shoulder by his mother, who whispered to him, "We know they're all lies, son. Let's hope the judge knows too." The judge proceeded. He goes on to say that Arthur had planned this event with him and some other boys from weeks before he'd done it. Arthur is the leader of a gang, and if anyone says anything against him in this case, they will be killed by the gang. The court holds another 4 letters to this effect and finds it hard to ignore them all. If the court is to free Arthur, and the findings of these letters are true, we would have locked away the sheep and released the wolf. The court finds it hard to distinguish who is the real instigator, and if indeed there are any innocent parties. But we're sure there are guilty ones. In the light of all we've heard, and in conclusion, the court has no option but to find all parties in this instance to be guilty. No, no, my child is innocent. He's innocent, Arthur's mother shrieked as she broke down in her seat, holding on to young Arthur, wrapping her arms around her little child. You can't take him on me. He's all I have. You are not taking my little Arthur. You can't lock someone up for doing the right thing. How can that be justice? Jimmy hugged his wife and child and assured them he would take this to the highest court in the land. The courthouse erupted into angry bursts of raw emotion as the judge ordered for the children to be removed from the court and to be incarcerated immediately. The officers and social workers peeled the children off their clutching mothers and fathers to remove them from the courthouse. The children squealed and kicked with all their might. Their parents wouldn't release them from their grips. One of the children's fathers lashed out and hit the officer a punch in the face because he thought he was being too heavy-handed with his child. 3 police officers rushed and pinned the man to the ground while they removed his baby boy. Young Arthur watched this in front of him just before it was his turn to be taken. He trembled like a leaf and cried his eyes out, wrapping his arms tightly around his mommy's thigh, crying, "Mommy, Daddy, don't let them take me. Please stop this. You said it would be okay. Please, please don't let them take me. I love you, please." Jimmy felt the emotion surging through him like a burning inferno. He burst into tears. He couldn't hold back no more as the officers reached onto Arthur's little timid arm. "Son, son," he said, "please be strong. We will always be here for you. We love you and adore you with all our heart." The officers gently prized young Arthur from the grip of his sobbing mother. As they took him, she looked him in his little eyes, little blue eyes, which were all puffed up and red with flowing tears. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm really, really so sorry. Please be strong for me. I love you, Arthur, so much." Then she gave him a big kiss and hug and released him. His dad hugged him tight, kissed him on the head and said, "Please be strong. Promise me. Please promise me." "I promise you, Daddy, I will be strong." They marched him away. His little face was the saddest his parents had ever seen as they watched him looking back at them. Jimmy and Linda broke down in each other's arms. What will we do without our little Arthur? What is to become of him? I'm going to miss my little pal so much. I don't know how I will survive. I don't know how I will survive this. Linda sobbed on her husband's shoulder. The youngsters were restrained and taken away to a special unit in the local prison.